Down on the Black Sea coast of Russia, the city of Sochi is busy preparing for the 2014 Winter Olympic Games. Construction is booming, transport infrastructure is being completely revamped, and disabled access points are being installed across town. But aside from being Russia's second Olympic city, Sochi is also one of the country's most popular tourist destinations. People flock here for the long hot summers, the spacious beaches, and the warm seas. But if you're looking for more than just a tan, it's also an area filled with some amazing natural highlights.
So I've been spending a lot of time in the city, but up in the mountains there's the Caucasus Reserve, which is literally the size of Finland. So I've met up with my very experienced guide Alexei, and we are off on an adventure.
It's fair to say that if you're driving up here, then you're in for a bumpy ride. You might be lucky and find some tarmac, but mostly it's just dirt tracks and rocks. Fortunately, Alexei's wonderfully named Wazik is up to the task.
Right, it might not look like much, but the suspension on this thing is second to none. We have gone up and down and crashed and bashed, but it's still going. I don't think you can ask for much more. Luxury travel. I do love it so.
Just a couple of days in the Caucasus Reserve had whet my appetite for the mountains. The biosphere here is filled with unique flora and fauna and has some of the best hiking trails in the country. But getting to them wasn't going to be easy, especially as there are plenty of places that even the Wazik can't go.
James, take this one, please.
Yes.
It'll be my bike.
Okay. So I'm on the blue one.
To get into the forest, we needed to cross a nearby river. But along rugged paths like these, you need to be careful where you're putting your wheels.
And puncture. One of the problems of mountain biking is it's pretty easy to get a puncture if you run over a sharp rock. Fortunately, Alexei seems to have everything in hand. It's not bad for a patch job, is it? Hope it'll hold anyway.
And once we were up and rolling, it was time to head across the water.
This one's a bit wider. See if we can avoid falling in. The current's a bit fiercer here.
Alexei works as the head of a conservation park and knows almost everyone based in the Caucasus National Reserve. He gets to go home most nights, but there are forest rangers that live here with their families 365 days a year, and their little enclave was our next stop. The rangers are here to police the reserve and keep it as unspoilt as possible. And even though it's still late summer, they're already preparing for the winter.
The area covers a total of 54,000 hectares. That means we've got a lot to do, considering that the group is very small. The season's almost over.
Shall we help out?
Of course we can, sure.
Help is always welcome.
It was great to eat some real food after a long ride, and lending a hand in the fields seemed like the least we could do.
It takes quite a lot of upkeep, this place, and that includes several hungry horses. So the more hay we collect now should be enough to hopefully see them all through the winter. Oh, I'm wondering how much I can balance on my fork here. It's quite a good lot, isn't it?
After a couple of hours, we'd gathered a mini mountain, and Ranger Alexander took us off to collect our reward. We still had a fair way to go, and I was pleased to have someone else doing the hard work.
Okay, in the stirrups. So I'm on Butch here, which I guess means that Alexei is on Sundance. And I'm hoping that it should make going up the hills a little easier anyway. Is that right, boy? Will be all right?
Once our guide had got his rather spirited mount under control, we rode off into the forest.
I'm glad I've got the calm one here.
The paths here can be a little treacherous, and I was glad to have Alexander leading the way down to the water's edge.
Atta boy.
We managed to cross over, but with the pathway getting narrower, Alexander was forced to turn back with the horses, and Alexei and I were on foot again. But not for long.
We're away past the Mazimta River's spring high point, but the water here is still fairly fast flowing. So Alexei and I are going to need something quite sturdy if we're going to get down in one piece. And I think that this should do the trick nicely. See you at the bottom.
Rafting is one of the most popular summer sports up here in the mountains, and various companies offer trips down the river and extra crew to make up the numbers. And it certainly helps with the paddling.
Well, it wasn't exactly white water, as you can probably tell by the fact that I'm still dry. But we've made it, we're down here. And now we get to tackle the cliffs themselves.
I was expecting a nice hikeable path up into the reserve, and apparently one does exist. You just have to climb up to it.
What I'm worried about is that this is supposed to be the easy part. Oh, God.
Grabbing a helmet and harness from the group at the bottom of the cliff, I prepared for the ascent.
I've been on a couple of rock climbs before, but this is particularly steep. Nosha's got me through everything so far, so I'm going to put my faith in him once again.
But our first attempts didn't exactly inspire confidence.
Now, Alexei's done this before and he's having a bit of trouble. I might need some luck here.
Are you coming?
Okie dokie. Here goes nothing. Let's see how far we can get up.
It seems to do this sport well, you have to have incredibly strong fingers, as it's impossible often to grip a rock with the whole hand. Otherwise, it can be a very painstaking process. But after some long breaks and the odd cut and bruise, we made it to the path above.
Well, we've made it to the top.
Broken and a bit bloodied.
Feeling sore?
I'm not sure my shoulders are ever going to be the same, but up and onwards here.
Finally, we had mountains all around us and a clear road ahead, and Alexei and I could start our trek into the middle of the reserve. We still had a long climb in front of us, but at least it wasn't vertical this time.
Well, the trails just started to even out a bit, thankfully, because it's been really tough. So far, I'm still sweating. But, wow, look at that. I think it's all going to be worth it.
This trail has only been created in the last few years, and it's made the tough journey up into the reserve considerably easier, meaning more people have a chance to enjoy it. But there's still plenty of work going on up here to make the area more welcoming for tourists.
There's nothing like a 4-hour hike into the mountains, followed immediately by some construction work. But as Alexei is kindly guiding me up here for free, I think the least I can do is do my bit for the national park.
All the building is done using ecologically friendly material, and the team up here are busy creating 2 new houses for those visitors who prefer not to sleep out in the elements. But for now, it's a case that if you want a decent kip, you bring your own tent.
We'll try to get her up quickly before the weather changes.
It's already a little bit grey. Чуть-чуть сыро уже.
Fortunately, we'd brought a modern tent with us, and it was only a few minutes before everything was staked out and ready to go.
There we go. Home sweet home. Ooh. Time to get some grub on, I think.
It wasn't exactly going to be haute cuisine, but as long as it was hot and there was plenty of it, it was fine by me.
Here, take this. You can warm up with some tea. I recommend drinking it with some honey from our local bees, because it's naturally effective.
In the meantime, I was enjoying a brew with a good dollop of honey, and it's a bit of a local specialty here.
The reserve is full of beautiful flowers like these, and that means millions of bees. Grey Caucasian mountain bees, to be precise, makers of the tastiest honey in the region.
Ludmilla has been a beekeeper in this beautiful spot for more than 25 years and has dozens of hives in her back garden. And their residents are incredibly well behaved.
That's the first time I've ever seen anybody open a hive and not use smoke. They told me that the bees were quite friendly, and it seems to be the case.
The bees are perfectly adapted for the mountain flowers and supposedly have the longest tongues of all honeybees.
40,000 bees in here, wow.
All of them serving Her Majesty the Queen. Ludmilla breeds the queen specially and uses them to start new hives here and across the region. They're highly prolific, and it doesn't take the workers long to produce a honeycomb like this. Just don't expect them to give it up easily.
I'm going to start running down my chin. Oh, look at that. Absolute golden treasure. And for now we're going to have to share it with the bees.
Packed with sugar and energy, the honey was a great starter, but I was ready for my main course.
There's chicken here.
There are many wild animals out here. We could even see bears today if we're lucky. They might come to our tent even.
Bloody old tin openers.
It's because there aren't any berries out there, so they are hungry and on the hunt for food because their hibernation is over now. So let's not leave any empty cans outside.
Certainly don't want to meet any hungry bears here, so to take precautions.
Now let's add some meat.
When you're camping, there's always room for more calories. And who can resist chicken from a can?
I'm so hungry I really don't mind, to be honest, at the moment. Everything's going to taste good.
And after just 4 or 5 minutes on the boil, it was time to dig in.
James, hand your bowl over. This is porridge, or soup, or I don't know what exactly to call
It
it.
doesn't matter. We just need to eat.
Food we eat out here needs to be filling with lots of calories, so you have plenty of energy. Bon appetit. And some for me. So, how is it?
Nonmoilla. Actually, it's surprisingly tasty. I haven't eaten in about 8 hours, mind you, but...
I was completely exhausted, and with darkness closing in, I was ready to crawl into my sleeping bag and just hope that Alexei didn't snore too much.
Choose your language.
Good morning from me, Kevin Owen. If Bienvenidos a nuestra edición semanal.
Choose the news that concerns you. Choose the opinions that invigorate your mind. Choose the stories that impact your life. Choose the access to your RT.
Щит управления энергосистемы, на которой изображена такая система. Виртуальная схема этой энергосистемы существует.
With another long day ahead in the Caucasus Reserve, Alexei was keen to get going shortly after sunrise, and I sleepily wandered down to a nearby stream.
Good morning. A very misty mountain day. And time for me to try and wake up. And that will certainly do the trick.
That and a decent cup of tea, of course. And around here, it has to be some of the local brew.
One thing that the Russians and the British certainly share is a great love of tea. And here in the subtropical south, the lucky Russians actually have the climate that they can grow it themselves. This is the Matsesta tea plantation, and it won't be hard to believe that it's the biggest in the country.
It's been here since the late 1940s, but the whole operation was restored and modernised back in 2006. The plants themselves are extremely robust and able to survive winter temperatures which can drop below freezing, but they have to be harvested carefully. And one man who knows all about that is Vladimir, who's worked in the tea business all his life.
This part. Just the tips. We make green tea from these leaves. Why don't you try some? It's the best and very healthy.
The healthiest and tastiest part.
Have a try.
Can we?
Of course. It's a little bitter because of the tannin.
I think I prefer mine in a cup.
Becoming an expert tea picker takes time and experience, but they're always looking for new recruits.
Keep your fingers out the way. And listen to this guy.
Each plant has to be harvested up to 11 times a season, and it's certainly a dirty job.
Look at that. Come out of one of these bushes and you're absolutely soaked. You can see why you need all these sort of clothes, but what do you think? It's not a bad haul, eh?
Each one of these sacks weighs around 40 kilos, and they're delivered daily to the new processing plant.
This is part of our load from the fields, and we're going to see how it's turned into the green tea.
Maxime works on the automated production line, and that's a two-man job.
Here they go to the steamer. The temperature is 90 degrees. After that, they're cooled by this ventilator. Then they're weighted. Then they're dumped into a roller which whips them. The tea leaves then subjected to heating.
And the results look a bit like this. The processed tea is sent to the packing factory, and it's ready for the shops.
So that is the tea-making process from start to finish. Now, all that remains is for me to sample the goods myself.
And I have to say that drinking mountain tea in the mountains tastes particularly good. Energised, Alexei and I packed up and set off again, ready to make our way right into the centre of the reserve.
James, check this place out. It's very interesting because it is here that the Russians stopped German troops operating in the mountains. That was during World War II, otherwise known in this country as the Great Patriotic War. The Germans were aiming to break through to the Black Sea and seize its oil deposits there. Fighting in the mountains was a tough job considering the local terrain around us. There weren't any tourist routes back then.
And nearby were some considerably older landmarks.
These stone structures might well date back 1,000 years. People began breeding livestock here in the 10th century. Shepherds used these structures as shelters. If these 12 ruins are anything to go by, a dozen shepherds would stay here at a time while their animals grazed up in the mountains.
As we moved forward into the mists, we passed other travellers making their way towards camp. And they told us we were close to an oasis.
You can swim here.
Yeah, I was thinking about having a swim, but maybe if the weather was better.
Go ahead. It's not cold.
This is the Round Lake. It's fed by 6 surrounding springs, and its clear waters teem with wildlife.
This lake formed as a result of glaciers making depressions in the ground. It's likely to be hundreds of thousands or even millions of years old.
And just beyond its banks, there's a view that's worth all the effort it takes to get here.
Well, I said I wanted to see the most beautiful parts of the mountains, and I think this definitely counts. It might have taken almost a day of walking and a pretty uncomfortable night. We finally made it right into the heart of the Caucasus National Reserve.
It had been an amazing journey, but I wasn't relishing the thought of lugging my pack down the mountain on foot. But one of Sochi's Olympic developments was about to come to my rescue.
Tell you what, I am absolutely knackered, and to find a proper civilized way of getting down is about the best thing I've heard in the last 24 hours. Whew, I am done.
I said goodbye to Alexei and prepared to head down back to the city of Sochi. But before I did, I thought I deserved a little R&R.
The only thing that I want to do now is steam away my aches and pains in the banya, or the bathhouse. And it's probably one of the most Russian things that you can do. Or in this case, is it?
Hello.
Hello, have I made it to the British banya?
That's right. Yes.
Can I come in?
Yes.
Thank you very much.
Hi.
Hello, James.
James, yeah, good
James,
to see you.
good to meet you. Now, so I was thinking, am I going to see pictures of the Queen on the wall, the odd cricket bat here and there? So what's British about the British banya?
Well, even I'm not very British anymore, I think, but partly it's to do with the fact that it's like a British tradition to get all the best things from everywhere and put them in one place, like the British Museum.
James Larkin has lived and worked in Russia for more than 15 years, and he's turned his banya into one of the area's most popular spas. But it's not always been easy.
The retreat didn't work because people from Russia, they wanted to come on holiday to drink vodka and, eat barbecue,
Sure.
shashlik.
Yeah.
So their idea of vegetarian kitchen and walking in the mountains, yoga, it wasn't very good. So it didn't work. But in the end, we built a banya, and the banya worked, and it all went from there.
And as I went away to get changed, the first room was heated up.
Right, wait and see what happens here.
The temperature inside the banya pushes 100 degrees Celsius, more than 200 Fahrenheit. The process is all about getting rid of the body's impurities.
It's definitely the first time I've had another man cover me in honey. I never thought I'd be saying that on camera.
The whole experience is very intense and feels more like a tribal ritual than a spa session. But if you find yourself getting a little lightheaded, there's a sure way to wake you up again.
Mind, body and soul thing. Okay. And now... this bit's always less fun. Oh, it's ice cold.
Fortunately, the pain is temporary, and they have an extremely original recovery method.
A giant boiling cauldron. Spécial session. It's definitely the most unusual banya I've ever had, and certainly the best.
Okay, so being covered with honey, beaten with sticks, and then boiled in a large pot might not be traditionally British, but some things never change.
So, James, you wanted something English to finish the day off.
Oh, you are a gentleman and a scholar.
So, this is actually tea I bring back from England every time when I travel there. It's Twinings.
Shall I be honest?
Yes.
See now.
First the milk.
Of course. Chin chin, old thing.
Cheers.
What could be more British than two men in a cauldron enjoying coffee? Lovely weather we're having.
Yeah.
It was an eccentric but wonderfully relaxing end to my trip into the reserve. The scenery up here is incredible and a stark contrast to the bustling city a short distance below it. It's another side of Sochi that no one should miss.